Here's a highlight from a recent episode of Booked on Rock. Our guest is John McKie. He's the author of Prince's Sign of the Times. Prince could turn a mistake into art. Michael Bland, his drummer, Prince's drummer from the 90s, told you there was no such thing as an accident in the studio.
Yeah, one of the things the book does is that for those listening who decide that they don't like Prince, and that's okay, I would still encourage you
Are
to
they
buy
out there?
Well, I don't understand. I wouldn't. It's a species I don't really understand, but
Is something wrong with them? What's going
yeah,
on?
I can't help them. But what fascinated me was that the other musicians that Prince has got in common with, and Prince was also around that time of Sign of the Times. It was mooted to do a record with Miles Davis, and so when I went into research for the book, I became fascinated by Miles Davis as well. And the reason I mentioned Miles Davis here in answer to your question, which I will come to answer your question, is that Miles Davis didn't talk when he worked with bandmates about mistakes. He talked about interesting choices. And, he would talk about if you play a wrong note, make it sound like you meant to play it the same note. And Jay Graydon, that I mentioned a minute ago, said that when he played a wrong note or a mistake note, whatever you want to call it, he would then play it as part of a sequence to make it sound like that was what he'd meant to do all along.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. And so the happy accident, as I call it, is something that I became fascinated by. And just the opportunity to kind of write about how, the several songs on Sign of the Times where quote unquote mistakes are turned into making it sound like it's meant to sound. So the ballad to Dorothy Parker, Susan Rogers, who was his engineer at the time, had installed a new console and the sound was dull and flat. And Prince just didn't even comment on it. So she'd kind of made a quote unquote mistake. And he said, "Oh, the console sounds, different." But again, part of the reason that the Ballad of Dorothy Parker sounds so weird is maybe to do with that. Forever in My Life, which again is got center stage of the movie, there's a refrain that he sings as part of the chorus, and that is an accident, and it's turned into a recurring theme. And again, I was lucky enough to interview Patricia Rushen, the great Patricia Rushen, and she talked about Freddie Washington's bass playing on Forget Me Nots. And that was actually the start of a mistake. Now, I don't think anyone could listen to Forget Me Nots by Patrice Rushen, which has been sampled to turn into number one hits by George Michael and by Will Smith, and go, that was a mistake. That's someone who's a grade musician knowing what to do and knowing how to turn it into gold.